Welcome back. Let's get to the latest transfer news now. We've been joined on set by Mark Macadam. Mark, a very good afternoon to you. We've got to start with the breaking news that we brought everyone at the top of this hour that's coming out of Everton. What can you tell us? Yeah, Nolan, Erik Booman, the youngster who has arrived from Aston Villa. He's an England under-19, England under-20 international, so very much one for the future. And I think this gives you an indication as to the type of signings that Everton will be making over the course of this summer. Young, hungry players that they can develop and sell on and make a huge profit on. He signed a 3-year deal at Everton, so he's going to be there for some time and had a loan spell at Queen's Park Rangers back in the 22-23 season, so he's got experience in the EFL as well. But it shows Sean Dyche trying to recruit young, exciting players to Everton. Of course, you've got the new stadium on the horizon as well, so some young, exciting players could be just the tonic. Because we know that there are challenges with regards to PSR at Everton. They're going to have to be very creative and clever over the course of this summer. And of course, we know that there is that deadline of June 30th where the new financial year will reset. So any potential business that gets done before that could help in offsetting any problems they may have down the line. And you've got a number of clubs that are currently in that same situation as Everton at the moment. But the fact they've got a player in nice and early will be seen as a massive positive. Yeah, really positive news for Everton and Everton fans. And there could be more good news for Everton fans as well on the way. Yeah, Jack Harrison, a player that Everton fans will know very well. Of course, he was there on loan last season from Leeds. He's a player that offers so much, really, and a player that Sean Dyche knows, which is important. We know he can score in the Premier League. You can see it there. He's a really good, cultured midfielder who offers so much as well out wide, and his work rate is absolutely fantastic. We know he's got a contract at Leeds until the summer of 2028. But because Leeds didn't gain promotion to the Premier League last season, it means that he is potentially available on loan. Hence why Everton have gone back for the same man that it had on loan to say, we'll take you back on loan again. It would suit Everton because financially, there's no outlay other than wages and a small loan fee. And of course, will help with their PSR. This is a deal that we're expecting to get done in the next 48 hours. So only a matter of time before Jack Harrison from Leeds to Everton gets confirmed again. Okay, let's talk about Michael Oice because Chelsea looks like they've missed out on the Crystal Palace forward. What can you tell us? What is the very latest? Yeah, this is a fascinating situation, isn't it? A player that's coveted so much interest over the course of the last couple of years. You go back to last summer and there were a number of sides interested in taking Michael Oice, one of them being Chelsea, who were also interested this summer. Now, in August 2023, he signed a 4-year contract at Crystal Palace. He had a release clause, we understand, to be £35 million. But he decided to stick with Palace, continue his development. One of the quotes I find quite fascinating and one I'll pick out was Steve Parish said, "We believe he's got a bright future. We can help him move to another level." That level is one of the biggest institutions in world football because we understand that Bayern Munich are leading the chase at this stage to get the signature of Michael Oice. We understand that personal terms have all but been agreed and we understand there to be a release clause in his Crystal Palace contract. Not the £35 million that existed last summer. This is a new release clause which potentially could be around £50 million. So it'd still be some significant investment from Bayern Munich, but they're going to get a player that has huge quality. Just 22 years old, joined Crystal Palace in the summer of 2021. The situation with his stats and numbers is really positive as well. This is the situation per 90 minutes for Crystal Palace last season. You can see 19 games, 14 starts, 1,277 minutes played in the English top flight, and that equates to some really positive numbers when you compare him to other Premier League players. You can see on the right-hand side of that graphic the Premier League rank, and this is per 90 minutes. You can see 0.7 goals a game, assists quite significant as well because it's essentially 1 assist in every 2 games, which puts him 5th in the Premier League rankings. You can see shots, big chances created, take-ons, crosses attempted. He is right up there with the Premier League's sharpest and best. And I think the fact that he's in his early 20s as well shows you how much progression there is still to go. He's a player that's going to improve, he's going to get better, and there's no question that potentially he could fit right in at Bayern Munich. Big shout out to Reading as well, who of course played a massive part in his development, and the EFL side going through their own traumatic times at the moment. But yeah, exciting to see what happens. We know that Newcastle were interested, we know that City, Manchester United had discussed Oice, we know that Chelsea were very much at the table, but it's our understanding that Michael Oice has opted at this stage to potentially head to Bayern Munich, which would be absolutely huge and an opportunity to link up with Harry Kane, Erik, a couple of players he'll know from Premier League football. So yeah, brilliant situation there, one to keep an eye on. We're expecting developments over the coming days. Okay, so Chelsea missing out there, but more positive news elsewhere in London. What is the very latest coming out of West Ham? Yeah, so this is another interesting one. The Wolves captain, 27-year-old Max Kiemann, is the primary #1 centre-back target for Julian Lopetegui at West Ham. Of course, we know new manager into East London and potentially linking up with a former player as well. This is a player that he'll know very well because he managed him at Wolves as well. So yeah, that's a key part of this deal. Interestingly, he signed a 5-year contract last summer at Wolves, and it's our understanding that West Ham's initial bid of £25 million has been rejected. However, it's expected they will go in with a second offer, trying to meet the gap between what West Ham value him at and what Wolves value him at. Of course, he's the captain, he's a key player, he's an important figure in that dressing room, so Wolves won't want to lose him. We know that last summer they were under a lot of pressure financially to try and meet their PSR commitments and not go over the threshold and therefore suffer a points deduction. This summer, it's a very different story financially. The house is in a much better place, so therefore they're under no pressure to sell. Obviously, Let's talk about Manchester United. While we've got you here, we must mention Erik Ten Hag. He'll be staying on as manager for next season. A sensible position, and how do you think the club handled the situation? I think it's one of those that actually, it's not perfect, waiting 2.5 weeks after the end of the season to make a decision on the manager and quite obviously flirting with other managers in the meantime. But I do believe that because Erik Ten Hag had such a disappointing season in the league, the club were well within their rights to be able to see what was out there in the market. But if, as we all know, the manager market this summer has been quite difficult for a number of clubs, top clubs in Europe, I'm happy that I think that they've continued to maintain that stability into next season. So I think they've come to the right conclusion in the end, but I also think they were within their rights to review at the end of the season and look at other options. And I think from Erik Ten Hag's point of view, the fact that he knows that maybe they had a look at other managers is not ideal. But I think he's also got to accept that when you're finished in the league position that Man United did, that there is a chance that you could lose your job. So I think that he should be happy. I think the club should be happy. And the big thing for me is, I actually think that when you're looking at the fact that Man United have changed owners, CEO, sporting director, technical director, and CFO, the 5 or 6 major positions in the football club, to actually have some stability within the football side for another 12 months, I think it's probably a sensible thing to allow those people that are not in the club yet, some of them, to be able to build the foundations underneath the football side whilst having to settle a new manager in would have been obviously more difficult as well. Because a new manager coming in, any new manager coming in would have said, I want to look at the playing squad, I want transfer windows, I want transfer budget, which Man United don't quite have at this moment in time because of FFP. I think that it's a sensible thing for the club, and I think it's a sensible thing and right thing for Erik Ten Hag. Well, I thought it was a really disappointing England performance. Same old England, really. I think the problem started with the starting 11 that Gareth Southgate picked. The side just looked totally unbalanced. That starting 11 again, the same starting 11 as the Serbia game, had 3 right-backs in it and no recognised left-backs at all. And I think we really need to start talking now about ending the Trent Alexander-Arnold experiment. It just does not work having him in midfield next to Declan Rice. Yes, he's a brilliant player, but I don't think he's a central midfield player yet at this level. He's not what England need in the centre of midfield. I thought England were actually lucky not to lose this game because in the second half Denmark were giving as good as they were getting. But I think their manager may have told them to keep shooting from long range. I don't know how many people are aware, but a new ball is being used in this tournament, and Harry Kane was telling us a few days ago that the ball favours strikers and forwards rather than goalkeepers. I think it's lighter, it moves more, and that was a real feature of Denmark's game. So we're back where we are again, where we've been again so many times talking about a disappointing England performance when we should have been talking about England winning their first 2 Euro games in a row. That had never happened before. They could have done that today, and also if they'd won, they would have been into the knockout stages already. They would have been guaranteed finishing first. It would have meant that against Slovenia, but Gareth Southgate could ring the changes, but I think now there is a feeling that it's back to the drawing board for Gareth Southgate because he's going to face a lot of criticism because the bottom line is England weren't good enough today here in Frankfurt. Harvey, we went 1-on up against Serbia and England took their foot off the gas. It seemed that similar happened tonight as well. Just from what you saw, could you see a noticeable difference from the way England played before they'd gone 1 up and after? I think they started really well. They scored a good goal. Kyle Walker, excellent, really tenacious, winning the ball on the right, putting the cross in okay. It took a couple of deflections. Harry Kane was there. England got the perfect start. Kane scored his, 64th goal for England, his 47th goal of the season, but then he started to go wrong again. You could feel that England was sitting back. They were playing too deep. Their midfielders weren't getting to the ball quickly enough. They were giving Denmark too much room, and it's a feature of tournament football at this level is when you score, the opposition are going to respond, and it's up to you to respond to their response as well. And we haven't been seeing that from England, because when they score, they're not pushing on trying to get the second goal. They're being too passive. I'm not sure if that is the fault of the players or that is the fault of the side that Gareth Southgate has picked because it's unbalanced. England are very good down the right. Walker, Saka, that's where the goal came from. They're unbalanced, disjointed down the left. Kieran Trippier, he's a great player. He's a great right back, but the balance isn't quite right with having him as the left back, and the balance isn't quite right with having Phil Foden on the left either, and that's where Denmark's goal came from. It came from an England throw-in. Harry Kane was deep in his own half. He was being criticized for playing too far forward against Serbia. It looked like he was drifting in, coming back, trying to get involved in the play when he didn't really need to. He gave the ball away, and then we saw the England midfield too late to close down Morten Helmand and his strike, good strike, beat Jordan Pickford, and that was the goal that Denmark deserved, and Denmark could have won the game. They had chances to win the game as well. So I think England will have to consider themselves pretty lucky to be leaving here with a draw, because they could have lost easily, and they're pretty lucky to still be top of the group, because that's two performances that haven't been great, and this performance I think was worse than our performance against Serbia, because at least against Serbia the first half was very good. Carvey, one of the things often leveled at Gareth Southgate is that he perhaps doesn't make the changes during the match when he should. And when he does make the changes, perhaps they're not the right changes. So we saw the likes of Conor Gallagher come on in the second half, Jarrod Bowen, Ollie Watkins and Eberezi. What did you make of their introduction? Do you think that England's bench was impressive tonight? I think first of all, Gareth Southgate was bold. He didn't hang around. He made substitutions quickly. I'm sure he's aware of the fact that he's been criticized in the past for not making substitutions quickly enough. He was very bold. I mean, bold or foolhardy. You make your mind up because he took off 3 of his best players with 20 minutes to go in Foden, Kane and Saka. I think the crucial change was the one he made earlier after 53 minutes. Really early in the second half, he decided to take Trent Alexander-Arnold off and bring on Conor Gallagher, and that gave the side a better balance. And they looked much more settled, but I think still Denmark scented that they could go on and get the winner. I think Kane down the left, Jarrod Bowen was down the right, and Ollie Watkins I thought made a difference when he came on because he gave the Danish centre-backs the back three something to think about. With Harry Kane on the pitch and Jude Bellingham behind him, they didn't have to worry about somebody running in behind them. When Watkins came on, that is something that they had to worry about. You could see them moving further back and giving England a little bit more space. So certainly Gareth Southgate has to make changes because I don't think he can pick that starting 11 again. I suppose you can give him some credit for recognizing that things were going wrong and making changes, but I could hear inside that stadium, look, this game started off as a celebration. England fans had had a great day in Frankfurt. They were in really good voice. Everybody was having a good time. The perfect start with that Harry Kane goal, but towards the end of the game, the mood had totally changed. I could hear pockets of England fans criticizing some of the players and criticizing Gareth Southgate as well. But let's turn our attentions back to England. The former England defender and coach Gary Neville was watching in Germany last night and joined us live now. Gary, good morning. Marks out of 10 for that last night. I'd say probably 5 or 6 in the first half, maybe moving towards 6.5, 7 in the second. Maybe I'm being a little bit kind there, but obviously we would expect to beat Slovenia, but they had a lot on the game. And in the end, the objective of qualifying from the group was achieved, but the performance in the first half was similar to the first 2 games, and I did see a glimmer of hope in the second. There was a lot of talk. I'll go to the end of the game first before maybe talking about some of the things that happened in the match as well. Gareth Southgate speaking post-match about the atmosphere, the environment, the frustration that's being aimed towards him. Does it feel to you any more vociferous than we've seen in previous tournaments? Yeah, I didn't, to be honest with you. We came back into the studio, so I didn't quite see what happened. Obviously, there were, I think, reported that a few beer glasses or whatever it was were thrown at Gareth. That's just not acceptable at all on 2 levels. There's just one basic sort of behavioral issue that you should never throw anything at anybody. And secondly, I think Gareth's been an incredible coach for England. Servant to England over 15 to 20 years. Not just with the first team, but with the under-21s and as a player, and he doesn't deserve that. He's one of the real sort of good guys that England have had. Yeah, criticism, yes. Booing, yes. I think that England teams down the years have had that. I do think that there is an element of surprise, maybe not with Gareth, because he's seen it all before, but I do think there is element of surprise with this group, that the criticism that they're getting, but that's just off the back of the standards that they've set. It's really simple. They've achieved more, they've achieved better, they've played better, and when we see them not playing at their best, then it stands out. It's quite stark, and I think at this moment in time, there are players who are outstanding players, great talents, great players who are playing well below their standards, and I think that's why there's a frustration. It seems to get a little bit better as the game wore on, and in particular when Kobbie Mainoo, Anthony Gordon and Cole Palmer were all on the pitch. There were signs of life in that second half. Yeah, and I would add Trent Alexander-Arnold to that as well at right back. He played a couple of passes, one particular that I remember down the sort of right-hand side, which played, I think, Cole Palmer in behind. But you're right, the introduction of every substitute improved us. That sometimes can happen. The game opens up a little bit. Players are a little bit more tired, but I genuinely felt that those players that came on would probably improve us before the match, not just probably at the end of the match, and Kobbie Mainoo getting control of the game in midfield. I was surprised. I think Conor Gallagher's a fantastic player, but the profile of player that I felt that we needed was a controlled player, a player who could get us playing. I think that helped with that. I think the team looked more balanced and the football looked a lot more fluid when he came onto the pitch. I liked his interview at the end. Thought it was really mature. Thought Cole Palmer did really well when he came on. Anthony Gordon showed glimpses, so I think the team that we finished with, you thought, here we go, we can hang our hat on something here. It looked like it had more of a fluidity to it, a balance. It looked more relaxed in possession, composed, and I think that's what this England team are capable of, and it'll be really interesting to see how many of those that finish the game start on Sunday. Well, it was really interesting that Gareth Southgate in his post-match interview, one of the quotes was, "We're balancing blooding them in a really difficult environment." But I think back to some of the squads that you were in, the likes of Michael Owen or Wayne Rooney, if they're good enough, surely you just chuck them in. Yeah, I mean, they were one player, obviously you're talking about. They were talking about 3 or 4 at once, but I don't think there is any option. These players not only are they're not only young, but they're actually, I think, our best players in respect of ability and talent, and that's the reason you can't hold them back. And actually, I think they're the best solutions for us at this moment in time to be more comfortable out on the pitch. I completely understand the experience point and the know-how point around being around the blocking tournaments and understanding that keeping clean sheets and a stability to the team, but I do think that we've got to try and free up a little bit. It's what obviously every England coach has been demanded of for many, many years. And for Gareth, it's no different here. But he's got an arsenal of talent to call upon, which is maybe an embarrassment of riches. It's maybe making his job slightly more difficult. And when you think that Maddison, Grealish and Rashford are not even in the squad, and you've got all those players that are currently in the squad, I think now is the time, particularly with what happened in that second half. And Gareth alluded to it at his post-match press conference that those lads did well when they came on, and it's probably time now for them to be given their run and their chance. Did you feel a fraction of sympathy for Conor Gallagher? It never looks great, does it, being hooked at half-time? And it could have been any of them after 45 minutes, couldn't it? I really felt it. I felt it before the game for Trent Alexander-Arnold, to be honest with you, because you know international football. These lads play for massive clubs. They play for Liverpool. They play for Chelsea. They're under the scrutiny and spotlight all the time, but honestly, there is nothing like England in a tournament, and I think a few of these younger players are probably for the first time recognizing what it's like to have the heat on them in a tournament. It's brutal. It's unforgiving, and you sometimes feel it's unfair when you're in there. I've been there myself, and I remember times when we reacted particularly poorly to it. And there were times where we wouldn't speak to the press as a group because of, to be fair, what we perceived to be bullying of players back in the day. And we were defending the players. I think that was probably a position that Harry Kane and Declan Rice have taken this week by coming out as the senior players and sort of just punching back a little bit. But I said last night before the game, it's the first time I've seen this group of players a little bit sort of, nerfed by the criticism that's come. Their way, no one likes criticism. Everyone wants praise. They've had a lot of it over the last few years, and they deserve that for their performances. But I think they've set themselves a standard now, that if they don't reach that means that they are going to obviously have some criticism thrown at them. And it's the first time I've seen them get dragged into the weeds a little bit. We got dragged into the weeds quite often back in the day, and it created a fear factor amongst the group because of the perceived sort of what would happen if we were the player that made the mistake. There was a collection of players who were absolutely battered at. The end of tournaments if they made errors, Gareth was one of them if you remember back in Euro 96, but David Beckham, Wayne Rooney, my brother and other players, since they don't want to be that player and this team have freed themselves of that in the last few years, and I hope they can just relax in the next few days, knowing they're qualified for the knockout phase and they can be themselves and not carry too much thought about what's happening outside and externally. I think that journalism is a lot more considered now, but maybe there are other areas of the media which are a little bit more sort of direct and the players find it difficult. But what you'll never get away from is the players might not see it themselves, but it's their parents and their families that feel it, as my mum and dad did back in the day. But it got to the point where I had to speak to my mum and dad to tell them that I don't want them to relate to me anything that they'd seen in the media, because it was never going to help me. Those messages of sort of criticism or negativity that occurred really get to your family, they really get to your friends. They take it personally, and every England player has been through it that's played for England in tournaments and a number of times. But what you have to try and do is actually try and completely ignore it if you can, if you do hear about it, but actually I think maybe having a conversation with friends and family, not to forward on text to what someone said, not to ring you up and say, have you seen what so-and-so said on this station or that station? Because interesting news coming out from Stamford Bridge. We can confirm that Chelsea have signed Willian. Chelsea have signed another reported wonder kid, just 17 years old. What can you tell us about Esteval Willian? The players are getting younger, which means we're getting older. But no question, this is potentially another superstar of the future. It's been confirmed by the football club in the last hour or so. Esteval Willian, the young 17-year-old. They have agreed a deal with Palmeiras, which we understand to be worth PS 29.1 million as an initial fee, but of course could grow depending on add-ons. He's a Brazil youth international and has been nicknamed Messinho. What a nickname. Under obviously the watchful eye of Lionel Messi. Very similar player. He's probably one of the most exciting young talents in South America. He wants to get on the ball. He's got raw pace. He's exciting to watch. He's 18 in April. He won't be linking up with the Chelsea team this season. He's going to stay at Palmeiras, but will be coming to London in the summer of 2025. Our understanding is he signed a significantly long deal as well. It's one of these big Chelsea contracts, so he'll be attached to the Stamford Bridge club for a number of years. But the Chelsea fans won't get to see him anytime soon. But yes, 17 years old, and he is worth a lot of money already. It'll be interesting to see how he develops over the next 12 months, but certainly one to watch for the future. Let's just bring you a bit of breaking transfer news from Manchester United, who have an interest in the Paris Saint-Germain midfielder Manuel Ugarte, one of a number of positions they are looking to strengthen this summer. Ugarte has been with the French champions for just a season, having arrived there from Sporting Lisbon last summer, a Uruguayan international as well. We know a couple of other positions that Manchester United are looking at over the course of this summer, heavily linked with the Netherlands striker Joshua Zirkzee. They've met his release clause at Bologna, so it's now up to him and his representatives to have a conversation with the club. Also looking at central defence too. Following the departure of Raphael Varane, main interest is in the Everton defender Jarrod Brantway. They've yet to follow up their initial offer to the England defender to Everton, which was rejected. What about Jonathan David? Well, we spoke about him last week and the interest that Manchester United also had in the Lille forward. Tottenham had made no formal contact with the player, who is into the final year of his contract. Well, two other Premier League clubs interested as well, both Chelsea and West Ham, although neither of those clubs has made formal contact with Lille yet either. Well, Manchester United are closing in on Paris Saint-Germain's Manuel Ugarte and Bologna's Joshua Zirkzee. Michael Bridge has the latest. Positive talks are continuing between Manchester United and the current club Bologna. Of course, maybe a little bit more difficult given that he's on international duty with the Netherlands. A fee of around £34 million is being discussed. Good news though for United fans. Cautious optimism that a deal can get done. Bologna is wanted by a number of big clubs, but United seem to be leading the way there, so more on that as we get it. But the positive talks are continuing. Cautious optimism. I like that phrase. They also want to sign a midfielder from PSG. Is that right? That's right. Manuel Te, a 23-year-old PSG midfielder. A really aggressive midfielder, maybe someone United are potentially missing in that midfield. 23 years of age, full of energy, tenacious. Talks continuing there as well. It's clear that Manchester United are looking to do some business in all positions, forward line, midfield, and that would be some signing. But they have a price in mind for him, and they have other targets in that position too. Okay, what about Jarrod Branthwaite? Where are we with that? I think this is the first name we talked about when the transfer window was opening on 1 Hour Sports Monday Roundtable with Nolan. We know they like him, but how much do they like him? Because we know something. Everton love him. We talk about what is he worth. To Everton, they're not going to tell us a price, a valuation, because Sean Dyche wants him at his club next season. We know the bid of around £35 million was rejected. Would they maybe consider something higher? We'd have to wait and see, but there has been no development on that so far.